Now welcome to another lightning response video where let's get to a couple questions this time, starting with this one from Solar Bear who asked, "Hey Thor, I'm wondering what you think about all these Disney Plus shows and their rewatchability. It feels to me that so many of these shows are just disposable content. Aside from Andor and a few episodes from Mando, I haven't returned to Ahsoka, Kenobi, and Book of Boba Fett. Have you? It feels like, to me, Disney/Lucasfilm is just making things to fill the space until the next thing airs, and it isn't making memorable content. Just my 2 cents, love your videos, man." And yeah, I tend to agree with you that most of it doesn't feel very memorable, or maybe special is the right word for it. It doesn't feel like art as much as it feels like content for the sake of content, or for the sake of keeping the money rolling in for Disney and Lucasfilm. And the only things I've gone back and rewatched were the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, and I did that mainly because I did a recap or kind of rewatch series of videos before season 3 over on my other channel. Which isn't to say I would have never gone back and watched it again otherwise. I actually think, especially the first season of that show, did feel very fresh and unique and was quite good. Though I don't know if, in hindsight now, it's as great as I initially thought it was. I do think it coming out in the sort of wake of the sequels, which, as most of you know, I was not a big fan of, that it did help them to some degree. It made them feel maybe a little better than they actually were, which again isn't to say they were bad or anything. I do still like them. And it was just really nice to watch something Star Wars, especially at that time, and for the most part to enjoy it without any sort of major complaint about lore or whatever else it might be. Furthermore, I'll absolutely be going back to watch Andor Season 1 before the second season comes out. I've kind of just been waiting for that to watch it again, though I'm tempted to watch it again anyway, and then to watch it again before Season 2. But as for things like Mando Season 3, Ahsoka, Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, I honestly have no plans on ever watching them again. I mean, I wish I did. I want to watch them again, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying I never ever will. I'm sure I will get tempted to watch them again at some point, probably, maybe. But part of the problem, to be completely fair here, is that it's just a huge time commitment to rewatch a series that was, at best, kind of okay. Especially when virtually every day it feels like something new comes out that I can watch or read or play, and not just Star Wars, but just things in general. I have a stack of books I want to read, of games I still want to play, of shows I want to watch, or movies I haven't gotten around to. There's just tons and tons of entertainment options out there. So something has to be pretty dang good for me to want to go back and experience it again, to devote, depending on how long it might be, multiple hours to it. And when it boils right down to it, there's a lot of things I'd rather do than, say, watch Kenobi again. That then kind of brings us to this question from Darkness of Truth, who asked, "Hey Thor, I'm a little confused as to why people don't boycott these lesser quality Star Wars projects. Surely if they are so bad and the people behind them are so degrading of them, the fans should unite and hit them where they will be hurt." Well, the thing is, there are a lot of fans out there who don't necessarily think about Star Wars or its content in terms of it either being good or bad. They consume all of it and love it simply because it's Star Wars, and they, maybe not consciously, they tell themselves they're going to enjoy it pretty much no matter what because it is Star Wars and they love it. And in all honesty, I think it's actually a pretty sizable number of fans that fall into that category, more than you'd probably think. And Disney and Lucasfilm certainly know they exist, as does a company like Ubisoft, who are going to charge $130 for the Ultimate Edition of the upcoming Outlaws game, because they know they can. They know they can get away with it. They know some people, again, probably a lot more than you'd ever want to think, that they will indeed pay that simply because it's Star Wars, and they don't really question it. And that really is the power of the Star Wars name, or brand, or logo, or whatever you want to call it. That's what Disney paid all that money for roughly a decade ago. A guaranteed audience who want as much Star Wars as you can give them, and they won't question the quality of it all that much, if at all, really. It's basically a crutch or a safety net, however you want to look at it. They know a certain number of people are always going to watch and love the shows or games, no matter what, or almost no matter what. I'd like to hope everyone has their limit. And as I've discussed before, the more some people are critical towards Star Wars, the more some people on social media bash it or make videos ripping it apart, saying it's dead, the more resolved these people become to defend it. And the last thing they ever want to do is admit that those they've long since branded toxic haters, or maybe worse, that they have a point of any kind or might be right about something, that no, not everything Star Wars is great. which is the real problem with immediately labeling anyone who disagrees with you or has a different opinion about you over something, be that Star Wars or pretty much anything else. That's the problem with labeling the most awful things you can, because once you've done that, once you've accused someone of being the literal devil, you can no longer compromise or even talk to them without being seen as, well, compromising with the literal devil. And look, I'm not trying to be mean to those out there who love everything Star Wars and just want to enjoy it for what it is without overthinking everything or being critical. As I was kind of saying before about going back to rewatch some of these Disney Plus shows, I wish I wanted to. I wish I could just enjoy Star Wars for what it is. And I think it was able to do that more before Lucas sold to Disney. I honestly don't think it was until then when Disney purchased it, and I knew in all reality it was going to be about the money they could make over anything and everything else, that I started to truly question things and became critical of Star Wars. And it really took until the sequels to fully realize that and really unleash that side of me, if you will. And don't get me wrong, George Lucas, I'm sure he loved the money he made from Star Wars, and if he cared about the integrity of it above anything and everything else, I'm not sure he ever sells to Disney. Which then kind of brings us to this question from Diz Guy, who asked, "Hey Thor, do you think that George Lucas selling Star Wars to a company like Disney betrays the very principles in which Star Wars was built upon? A key thing about Star Wars is that it is its own unique story made by an independent filmmaker who sought to break free from the corporations who wanted to meddle in the production of his work. By selling Star Wars to Disney, he has basically allowed Star Wars to become the very thing he hated with cash grab shows and meaningless corporatized content. Thoughts on this?" And yes, I do feel like he kinda sold out and betrayed his principles a bit. That the guy who hated Hollywood because they wanted to meddle with his work and he didn't want to play by their rules, that he ended up selling to Disney of all companies, a company that just consumes all of these properties and then churns out or spits out content. Though at the same time, I don't know what else he does or was supposed to do with Lucasfilm. It's not like there was somebody he could just pass the company on to after he was gone. I mean, we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar company here. And yes, there are people who love Star Wars who probably could have managed it well after he was gone. But how do you just hand them billions of dollars? And I do think, as he even said, he wanted there to be Star Wars for future generations. So, I don't know, maybe he just saw Disney as his best, worst option for making that happen. That if he had, again, tried to pass it on to somebody, they may have just sold it when he was gone, though I'm sure he could have put stipulations in the contract to prevent that from happening. I don't know. I don't want to say he lost his integrity for selling it or anything quite like that, or betrayed his principles entirely. Again, I don't know what he does. And I do think he believed, as I've kind of talked about before, that by putting Kennedy in charge of Lucasfilm before he left, he was kind of putting a friend in charge, that he thought to an extent he could, I don't want to say control her, but that she'd of course listen to him and he could still be rather influential without having to be fully hands-on, if that makes sense, that he could almost run things from the sidelines. I also think, as Iger even basically confessed in his own book, that Lucas was misled quite a bit by Disney. I think he believed that, for one, his sequels would get made, and that for two, they would still want his input on all things Star Wars. I mean, why wouldn't you want the guy who made Star Wars in the first place helping you out? But turns out they didn't. They didn't want his sequels or a whole lot of his input. And this is why he was very, very bitter shortly after selling, calling Disney white slavers and all of that. And so the sad irony is George Lucas always hated Hollywood and then got screwed by them one last time in the end. Alright, let's do one more quick question, and this one comes to us from Richard Zylokowski, who asked, "Hey Thor, how much do you think the 6-episode format is hurting the live-action shows? The good Star Wars that we've gotten, and or Bad Batch, have had more episodes to flesh out characters. The 6-episode shows either feel like they would have been better as films, Kenobi, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, or could have used more time to do what they were trying to do, for example, the Dr. Pershing episode of Mando Season 3. Okay, so I think the best way to maybe put this is that streaming services are a 21st century technology that are being run by those with a 20th century mindset. Meaning you have the technology for people to watch something anyway, anytime they want, but you're still presenting most everything as either a 2-hour-ish movie or a series with X number of episodes, and that gets broken up into X number of seasons, just like it's always been done, basically. And though I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either format, movies and shows are great, And it's not like there's a ton of different formats that you could ever try out or that I could think of off the top of my head. But I do think, or I'm surprised, I don't see more creativity attempted here when it comes to presentation, given the only limitations when it comes to what can be done with streaming services are the ones they place upon themselves. It's not like a movie on a streaming service has to be 2 hours long because it'll never be in a theater where people will only take sitting there for so long, or a series has to be broken up into a certain number of episodes or a certain length of episodes because they have to fit into an allotted time slot on a television network or a cable network. I mean, a year or two ago, Netflix had this show called The Kaleidoscope that you could watch the episodes in any order, except for the last one. You had to watch it last. And it would kind of change your perception of what was going on or give you different information at different times. And I thought that was pretty cool of an idea, and it ended up being very entertaining. And so what I'd like to see is more outside the box thinking in general. Let a story be as long or as short as it needs to be and whatever format it needs to take. And I'm talking about with Star Wars or anything else. Don't be holding yourself to these formats when there's no reason to. And yeah, we do have something like Tales of the Jedi and the upcoming Tales of the Empire that do a bit of outside the box thinking or different kind of presentation. And I hope we see more of them and more different things, more ways to tell stories than the ones we've had for what feels like pretty much forever now. Well, I think that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or what? Or you can always feel free to ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And so until next time, thanks for watching.